I never expected such rude words from the woman who was supposed to be my future sister-in-law. She said, "I don't plan on taking advice from someone over 30 who isn't even married yet. And you think you're something with that little bit of money you make?" Then my brother turned to me with a mean grin and said, "Sis, just go home already. But don't forget to leave your gift." They both laughed at me, and I felt a wave of anger toward him. But his next words took me by surprise. "Well, it doesn't matter if we get your gift or not. All our relatives like me better, so they'll probably give us a lot of money. Even Mom likes me more than you. She might leave all her property to me." His fiancée laughed and said, "Sounds like you're just using them for money." He just shrugged, saying, "Why not? They're a good source of income." I was stunned. I couldn't believe my brother had become such a terrible person. I regretted even coming here, thinking it would be a nice family reunion after so long. But it was clear he hadn't changed at all. If anything, he'd only gotten worse. I couldn't stand it anymore and left the room while they kept laughing together. "My name is Emma. I'm 32, and I work for an international cosmetics company. After graduating from college, I worked for a different company until my current one recruited me. I'm surrounded by ambitious people, and I work hard every day. I've always felt motivated at work, which has helped me become the head of my department. My company has always valued my efforts, and I truly enjoy each day here. Sure, some days are hard, but the satisfaction I feel after overcoming those challenges is worth it. I never used to think about how fulfilling life could be. Before college, my days felt stifling. I have a younger brother named Nate who's 5 years younger than me. Ever since he was born, my mom has been completely devoted to him, and I started to feel less important to her. As a little kid, I didn't know how to fill the emptiness of missing her attention. Even though my dad and other relatives tried to pay attention to me, I missed my mom's care the most. Nate, on the other hand, was the first boy in our family in a long time, and he easily won everyone over. Eventually, even the relatives stopped focusing on me and only doted on him. I've always had a strong sense of justice, and I can't stand unfairness. As a child, though, people didn't appreciate it when I pointed out problems, which only made me feel more distant from everyone. The hardest part was Nate's personality. Since he'd always been spoiled by our mom and relatives, he became someone who always needed to be the center of attention and knew just how to get it. Some would say he was good at making his way through life, but honestly, he was manipulative. I never got along well with him. Nate often caused trouble, but my mom always defended him. I started to feel like I didn't belong, not just with my mom, but with the whole family. Family gatherings became uncomfortable for me. Nate noticed my discomfort and would say things like, "Why don't you go to the other room, sis?" He'd say it with a smile, but his lip told me he didn't want me around. He was only in first grade, but if something bothered him, he wouldn't hesitate to lie, making me look like the bad one. I'd lost my role as the older sister, and when he'd tell me to leave, I felt I had no choice but to go. What hurt even more was how my mom and relatives acted. Once, when my dad noticed I was gone and asked, "Where's Emma?" my relatives just shrugged, and my mom replied, "I don't know." Then Nate chimed in, eager to share a story that put him in the spotlight again. My mom and the relatives listened to Nate's story with so much interest, it was like I didn't even exist. It was heartbreaking. Nothing changed, even if I wasn't around. At times like that, only my dad's sister, Aunt Ava, seemed to notice me. "There you are," she'd say. "Don't you want to go back to the others? Or would you rather stay here?" One time, as I quietly cried, feeling both sad and frustrated, Aunt Ava sat beside me without me noticing. She gently rubbed my back while I buried my face in her lap. When I couldn't find the words to explain, my aunt spoke softly. "I think I understand, Emma. Maybe it's because I'm an older sister, too. When my brother was born, he got all the attention. And you know how most of our relatives are women, they really spoil the boys. I always thought it was unfair." "You too, Aunt Ava." I was surprised. Aunt Ava was always cheerful and seemed in control at family gatherings, so I never thought she felt like this. She smiled gently at my question. "Yes. As a kid, I was jealous of my brother all the time. But he was quiet, so he didn't always get the spotlight like Nate does. I think what you're feeling is much harder than what I went through." Aunt Ava stroked my head gently. I hadn't felt someone care for me like that in so long, and I was a mix of happy and embarrassed that she could see my weakness. "Our family has strong bonds," she said, "and Nate, he's a bit clever, maybe even a little sneaky. He just knows how to charm people, right?" Everyone is easily taken in by him. Really, Aunt Ava? You see Nate that way too? I was shocked. I thought no one in the family saw what I saw in Nate. Aunt Ava winked and said, "Don't worry, Emma, I'm watching out for you. And if you need me to, I'll talk to everyone about it." "No, it's okay," I replied. "Just knowing you're looking out for me is enough." She nodded. "All right, but if there's anything you want to tell me, I'm here to listen." From that moment on, I looked forward to seeing my aunt at family gatherings. Even now that I've moved away, we keep in touch regularly. My only other connection with the family is the occasional email from my dad with updates. Since I rarely go home, I don't know much about the family's current situation, so I was surprised when I got this news from my dad. Nate is getting married. Right now, I don't have a partner. One by one, my friends are getting married, and even my coworkers are in a rush to settle down. I've been feeling a little anxious, so hearing about my younger brother's wedding was unexpected. I'm happy with my life, but it still made me think. I was feeling down, and then Nate contacted me, making things worse. He said, "Hey, it's been a while. I'm getting married, and my fiancée is already pregnant. Don't worry about giving mom and dad grandkids, I've got that covered. But can you give us at least $10,000 as a gift? Babies are expensive, you know." Any excitement I had about Nate's wedding dropped to zero with his entitled attitude. I thought about skipping the wedding but decided to go since it was a big family event. On the wedding day, after the ceremony, we went to a family waiting room before the reception. I saw my mom and other relatives for the first time in a while. And of course, all they talked about was Nate. I tried to be patient since it was his big day, but my old memories made me feel down. The cloudy sky outside made it feel even gloomier, and my mood just kept getting darker. That's when my dad came over and said, "Emma, it's been a while. How's work going?" "Oh, it's all right, Dad," I replied. "I hope you'll visit more often," he said. "Yeah, maybe when things calm down at work," I answered, but I didn't really mean it. I made an excuse to leave the room, feeling like I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I sighed, realizing that even though I've changed, others haven't. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Nate. "Come to the bride and groom's waiting room right now." I wondered what he wanted and went over. When I got there, Nate immediately asked, "Did you bring it?" It took me a second, but then I realized he meant the money. "Yeah, I brought the $10,000. Are you happy now?" "Congratulations on your wedding," I said, even though I didn't feel it. I instantly regretted being polite. "Only $10,000? Nate scoffed. "I said you should give more than that. Don't you know it's common courtesy to be more generous?" I was shocked. "Wait, isn't $10,000 already generous? I gave it because you said the baby was coming, but if you're going to act like this, I don't want anything to do with you," I snapped back. Nate just rolled his eyes. His fiancée, standing next to him, put her hand on her hip and laughed. "Don't worry, we don't plan to rely on someone who's still single in her 30s and acts so high and mighty over a small amount of money." I couldn't believe this was my future sister-in-law's first real words to me. Nate sneered, "Yeah, just leave the money and go. We don't need you here." They both laughed, and I felt a strong wave of anger toward them. But then Nate added something that made me feel even worse. "Even without your gift, we'll be fine," he smirked. "All our relatives love me. I'm sure they'll give us lots of money. Mom loves me more than you too. She might even leave me her whole fortune." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you just using them for money?" I asked, shocked. "Yeah, pretty much. That's why we invited mostly family and not many friends," he replied, grinning. At that moment, I realized just how awful my brother had become. Seeing how he and his wife used our family made me feel foolish for ever caring about them. I felt disgusted with my brother. He hadn't changed at all since we were kids. In fact, he'd only gotten worse. I couldn't take it anymore, so I left the bride and groom's waiting room as they kept laughing behind me. As soon as I stepped out, I heard someone call my name. It was my Aunt Ava. When I saw her, I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Auntie, I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving," I said. My aunt looked angry too. "I heard what just happened. This is unforgivable. Everyone should know," she said, but I hesitated. It's true that everyone seems to like Nate, so if I say something, no one will believe me. He's not forcing anyone to give him money. It's just me having to put up with it. My aunt had noticed me looking uncomfortable earlier and followed me when I left the room. She overheard everything Nate and his fiancée had said, and her anger flared even more after seeing how they laughed and looked down on our family. "You don't have to put up with this, Emma," she insisted. "I never imagined Nate would go this far. Let's go confront them and tell everyone the truth. If people still want to support him after that, then so be it." Encouraged by her words, I decided to face the situation and went back to the family room with her. Surprisingly, my mother's brother, Uncle John, believed my story right away. "Actually, there have been some bad rumors about Nate at work," Uncle John admitted. I didn't want to doubt my nephew, but I realized now I was only valuable to him as long as I was giving him money. Uncle John, as the company president, had put up with Nate's behavior because he was family. But now that he shared his experiences, other relatives began to believe me too. Even my mother, who had been defending Nate up to this point, started to look doubtful. She'd given him hundreds of thousands for wedding and childbirth expenses, and now she began to see through his intentions. My dad, who'd believed me from the start, was fuming with anger. Finally, when everyone understood the situation, my father spoke up. "I'm sorry for the way our son turned out. We must have raised him wrong. Let's all go home. He doesn't deserve a celebration." With those words, my mother and all the relatives decided not to attend the wedding reception. My parents hurried off to explain the situation to the other guests. We waited at the shuttle bus stop as other people who were supposed to attend the wedding started to arrive. At the end of the crowd, I saw my parents and my dad give me a strong nod of support. Seeing everyone believed in me and standing by my side filled me with gratitude. I tried to talk to my dad, but when I got close, he was angrily yelling into his phone. "Who would celebrate someone who repays kindness with cruelty?" he shouted. I realized he was talking to Nate. This was the first time I'd ever seen my dad so openly angry. I had heard from Aunt Ava that Nate had been calling our family and relatives gold diggers. My dad continued, "After everything they've done for you, how could you say that? We're not celebrating you anymore. We're going home." He hung up and turned to me, apologizing for all the trouble I'd been through. Once we got on the bus, Nate called me. He sounded panicked, accusing me and Aunt Ava of turning everyone against him and spreading rumors, causing everyone to leave the wedding. I calmly told him the truth. "Aunt Ava heard you making fun of the family, so she joined in and helped explain everything. I didn't spread rumors, I just told the truth." Nate was starting to sound desperate. "Are all of them on the bus? Please convince them to come back." But I didn't feel like forgiving him. "You just want the gift money, don't you?" I said. He tried to deny it, but I told him we weren't coming back and hung up, ignoring his desperate calls. Soon, everyone's phones on the bus were ringing, but no one answered. My brother and his wife had shown they only saw us as sources of money. Nate and his wife couldn't get any gift money from the wedding guests, and since they had planned to pay for the wedding with that money, they ended up in a lot of debt. They even reached out to our parents and relatives for help, but no one was willing to bail them out anymore. They lost contact with a few friends too. Nate's trouble wasn't over. Our uncle fired him, unable to keep covering for Nate's poor performance and bad reputation. His wife had already quit her job for marriage, but with a baby on the way, she didn't want to work. They struggled financially, fought constantly, and eventually divorced before their baby was born. Afterward, Nate's ex-wife tried working nights to pay off their debt. But her bad attitude held her back, and she could barely make ends meet. Nate couldn't find a new job and kept borrowing to cover his debts, returning to our parents for help. But both Mom and Dad refused him. Since Nate's wedding, I started visiting my parents more often, attending family gatherings without any discomfort. I felt more at peace, with a bigger perspective on life. I became more flexible at work and better at handling accidents or requests. My coworkers and bosses noticed the positive change, and just recently, I was invited to dinner by a business partner. It feels like spring is finally arriving in my life.